This hydro dipping question comes from one of our YouTube viewers, and he asked, could you consider doing a video on your sandblaster and the ins and outs of how sandblasting works, along with explaining what grains are used and why you use them more in depth? Y'all got questions? I got answers. Let's do it. So Timothy had a lot of great questions about sandblasting, and I have a video covering all of the details on my sandblaster. I'll leave a link to it right up here. So we're not going to go down there because it echoes really bad in the shop. So let's start with his first question, is the ins and outs of sandblasting and how it works. Sandblasting is fairly simple. You need a very large compressor to run a big sandblaster for long periods of time like I do. I recommend a minimum of an 80-gallon 5-horse. The one that I run is an 80-gallon 7.5 horse with a full refrigerated air dryer system, but you need a lot of air and a lot of dry air. That is the huge thing with sandblasting. It cannot get wet and you cannot have moisture in your air lines, or else you're going to have a hard time sandblasting. But what sandblasting does is actually doesn't use sand at all. Most of what I use is either red garnet or aluminum oxide, which is very tiny ground up crystals. It basically siphon feeds into the sandblasting gun. Air comes in and it pulls the media up and it blasts it onto your part, just as the name implies, sandblasting. Except we don't use sand. I already said that. So the reason that I use the red garnet and an aluminum oxide, red garnet's my favorite, by the way. Aluminum oxide is just a little dusty and it breaks down faster, but it's used for several different reasons. The first one is going to be to prep your part to give it the ultimate etch for paint to lay down on and actually bond to your part really well. The blasting etches the part down on like a microscopic level. Sometimes you can kind of feel it, but most of the time you really need a microscope to look down and see what it does to the surface. But basically it makes the surface look like a bunch of teeny tiny peaks and valleys and gives something for the paint to grip onto, so when it dries it can bond to your part really, really well. Another really good thing that sandblasting does is if you have a part that has an existing finish, like it's been powder coated or it's already been painted, we use the sandblaster at a really high pressure to blast off those old coatings so that we can get down to the bare substrate, whether that be plastic, metal, aluminum, whatever. The last great thing about sandblasting is it allows you to hydro dip things that are made of glass that you normally wouldn't be able to get a really good etch on. Yeah, you can take a red Scotch-Brite pad and scuff the hell out of glass all you want to. You're probably not going to do a whole lot to it. It really needs to be sandblasted to get glass to profile enough for the paint to stick to it really good. There are handheld blasters, there's outdoor portable blasters, and then there's blasting cabinets like what I have. The outdoor and the handheld ones don't recycle the media. Basically, you dump the sandblasting media in there, you spray it, and it just goes everywhere, and there's no way to recycle it unless you want to like sandblast on a big tarp and collect all of it up and then filter it back out. Ain't about that life, and I ain't got time for that. I use a sandblasting cabinet. Everything stays within the cabinet. After you blast, it goes up into the air and then falls down into the bottom of the cabinet, down into a little funnel system, and then it siphons it back up to your sandblasting gun. Here's a quick reference guide for you for different types of substrates that you might be dipping and what you need to sandblast them at. Polymers and plastics, usually I start around the 20 psi range, and I usually don't go any higher than about 40 to 45. Standard aluminum parts that are not like aircraft grade or super hard or haven't been heat treated, those usually get blasted somewhere in the like 40 to 70 psi range. All of your steel, stainless steel, carbon steel, usually starts in about 50, and you can go upwards of 100 to 120 psi if needed to remove existing coatings. If you're sandblasting aluminum parts that look like this, those are usually much higher quality aluminums, and they're a lot tougher than most of your average everyday aluminums, and they can be blasted at higher pressures up to about 90 to 100 psi. And I know I'm going to get asked by somebody who was too lazy to go watch the video that I suggested you watch earlier that has all the information about my sandblaster. My sandblaster is a Scat Blast from TP Tools. It is the model 985. I really like it. It has been a great blaster. I have no complaints about it at all. The only thing I wish I would have done is got a bigger one. Mine is 6 foot long. I wish I would have got an 8 foot long one. But they ain't cheap. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's roll the bloopers. There's a link to it down in the description box as well. There's a links to it down in the... Why do I do this so late at night? And I know I'm going to get asked by somebody who's way too lazy to go watch the video that I told you about earlier. Yes, Kevin, we know you're going to comment on the video and go, what kind of sandblaster do you have? I didn't see the other video.